In a league filled with legends, one name is rising to join the ranks. A player who defies gravity, breaks barriers, and challenges the greats. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek Freak! Giannis is carving his own path with a unique blend of speed, skill, and intensity. Can he reach the pinnacle and stand shoulder to shoulder with the legends? Join us as we explore the journey, the comparison, the legacy. This is Giannis versus NBA Legends, only on HoopsNScoops. Subscribe now and never miss an episode. Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the most powerful and ferocious NBA players of the last decade. Born in Athens, Giannis did not have the easiest path to the NBA. He caught a lot of people's attention while playing for Philadelphia in Greece, eventually being the 15th pick in the 2013 NBA draft. With guys like Kelly Olynyk, Shabazz Muhammad, and Ben McLemore drafted ahead of him, the Bucks definitely made the right choice with their pick. After some steady improvement, Giannis developed into one of the most lethal scorers in the NBA during the 2017-2018 season. A year later, he won the first back-to-back MVP titles, but disappointed in the playoffs. Thankfully for his legacy, Giannis overcame these playoff demons in 2021 as the Bucks came back from a 2-0 deficit to defeat the Suns. Despite only being 28 at the time of writing, Giannis already has the resume of an NBA legend: 7 All-Star appearances, 2 MVP trophies, a Defensive Player of the Year trophy, an NBA champion, and a Finals MVP. Even though he has more of his prime still ahead, let's take a look how Giannis stacks up against some of the best players of all time in his position. Giannis versus LeBron. It makes the most sense to begin with the best forward to ever play in the NBA, LeBron James. The rise of the Bucks forward has coincided with a down period in LeBron's career. As LeBron has started to slightly fade back from the spotlight, Giannis has taken his place as the dominant forward in the league. The comparison between the two players is easy to make, because LeBron and Giannis are two of the hardest players to stop driving to the basket in NBA history. While LeBron's strong, athletic build makes him impossible to stop, the speed and length of Giannis makes him as equally scary driving to the rim. While it is difficult to separate the two players in this sense, LeBron is definitely the better shooter of the two. Giannis is a career 29% three-point shooter, while LeBron averages 35% from 3 over a much longer career. LeBron is the similarly dominant player when it comes to playmaking. We have never seen a forward with the passing range of the king, but that doesn't mean that Giannis is a bad passer. He has averaged around 6 assists per game over the last 5 years, but LeBron is much closer to the 8 assists per game over that time. Defensively, it might be controversial, but Giannis does have the better resume. The Greek Freak is a similarly versatile defender to LeBron and already has something LeBron doesn't: a Defensive Player of the Year award. Despite playing half as long as LeBron, Giannis has just 1 fewer all-defensive first-team selections. Thanks to being a few inches taller, Giannis is a much better rebounder than LeBron. Not much that LeBron can do about the Bucks forward being taller than him. But that does not mean that Giannis has a better legacy all time. The issue for Giannis is that so far at least, he has nowhere near the playoff success that LeBron has had. So I think it is going to take some improved performances in the playoffs for Giannis to finish his career with a better legacy than LeBron James. Giannis versus Tim Duncan. San Antonio Spurs legend Tim Duncan is arguably the best power forward of all time, a title which Giannis could end up having himself. When you compare the resume of the two players at the moment, there is one thing that stands out straight away. While Giannis has an incredibly impressive resume already, Duncan had even more success in his first decade in the league. At the same time in Duncan's career, he was a 4-time NBA champion, a 3-time Finals MVP, and was also a 2-time MVP. Now, of course, Duncan benefited from being drafted to the San Antonio Spurs, where he began his career alongside David Robinson, winning a title in just his second season in the league. Giannis certainly did not have that luck when he was drafted to the league. Before Giannis, the playoffs were not a common occurrence in Milwaukee. When Giannis was drafted, the Bucks had not won a playoff series in more than a decade. In terms of their individual success, Duncan never put up the numbers that Giannis has. Scoring-wise, you have to give the edge to Giannis. Duncan's best scoring season in the league saw him average 25.5 points per game, with the Greek Freak averaging more than that in his last 6 seasons. The NBA does not really play as much defense as they did in the early 2000s, but you would still have to say that Giannis is the much better player on offense. The Greek Freak has always been a better playmaker, despite the legends that Duncan had around him. It is in defense where the two are pretty similar. Duncan never won a Defensive Player of the Year award in the league, but he was named to the All-Defensive Team 8 times. Giannis is probably the most versatile defender, able to use his superior agility to cover more positions than Duncan was able to. Giannis might end his career as the better player, but the team success that Duncan has had on his resume means Giannis would need to win at least a couple more titles to eclipse Duncan. Giannis versus Larry Bird. Larry Bird is one of those players who could probably be quite effective in today's NBA. Despite that, Bird and Giannis could not be more different players. For one thing, the two are very different levels of shooters. Bird is one of the best shooters in NBA history, regardless of position. Giannis is a good shooter, but we really should not need to explain why Bird is the far superior shooter. One of the things that gets overlooked when it comes to Bird's game is his playmaking. His stats are certainly better than the Greek Freaks, so I don't think Giannis is quite as good as assists as Bird. In a similar vein to their shooting, there is a huge difference in quality between the two when it comes to inside scoring and defense. Not only is Giannis 3 inches taller than Bird, but he's a far more athletic player than Bird ever was. No one was as scared about Larry Bird driving to the rim as they are about Giannis. His size also helps the Bucks superstar to be a much better rebounder as well as a much better defensive player. You would have to imagine that if these two ever matched up against each other, Giannis would use that physicality to push Bird around. There's a very good chance that by the time the Greek Freak decides to retire, he has more titles, MVP trophies, and Finals MVP trophies than Bird did in his time with the Celtics. Giannis versus Karl Malone. The mailman was one of those players who enjoyed the physicality of the game, much like Giannis. In fact, both players base their offense on an unstoppable move in the paint. While Giannis gets the majority of his points from driving to the rim, Malone could post up and score better than almost any player in the history of the league. Both players have similar scoring levels, although Antetokounmpo is the more efficient scorer across their respective careers. It is difficult to say who is the better scorer. It is similarly difficult to pick the better playmaker. While Malone has worse numbers, all of the ball handling in those Jazz teams were done by John Stockton. With scoring and playmaking pretty even, there is one big thing which differentiates the two's resumes. Malone was one of the many players to be burdened by playing in the same era as Michael Jordan, and so finished his career without an NBA title. Not only does Giannis have the NBA title Malone was always looking for, but Giannis is the better rebounder and defender, with Malone only being voted to the NBA All-Defensive First Team 3 times in his 19-year career in the league. Similarly to Bird, Giannis would enjoy a matchup against Karl Malone, and it seems inevitable that the Greek Freak will have a better legacy than Malone when he retires. Giannis versus Kevin Garnett. If you were looking for a player in NBA history who compares well to Giannis, then it is probably Kevin Garnett. KG is a similarly long and athletic forward who is also an elite scorer. Garnett never quite had the scoring numbers that Giannis has already had, his physical dominance just not quite leading to the same numbers that Giannis has put up, but KG can match up to Giannis defensively. Garnett is a former Defensive Player of the Year, being voted to the All-Defensive First Team 9 times. KG was a 4-time rebounding champion in the NBA. Despite playing in an era alongside some elite rebounders, it was partly down to that rebounding that KG won his first MVP award in 2004. But the difference between the two when it comes to offense has got to give Giannis the edge all time. He has already more MVP trophies than KG, as well as having the same number of titles. The Greek Freak is in the position to eclipse the career that KG had very soon. On the court, this is one of those matchups that fans would have loved to see if they were both in their prime. KG is probably the perfect player to stop Giannis, so it is a shame that those two played in different eras. But all time, the Bucks forward is going to be the better player. What do you think about Giannis against these NBA legends? Why not put your thoughts in the comments down below?